The evening sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street as Officer Mike Reynolds drove his patrol car slowly through the neighborhood. It had been a relatively quiet Thursday shift, a few speeding tickets, a minor fender bender, and the usual paperwork. Nothing that would stick in his memory. But that was about to change. Mike noticed the blue sedan with a broken taillight at the intersection. It wasn't the broken light that caught his attention, but the way the young driver kept glancing nervously in his rearview mirror. Following procedure, Mike flipped on his lights and pulled the car over. Just a routine stop, he mumbled to himself, a habit he'd developed during his 15 years on the force. He touched the small photo taped to his dashboard, a picture of his daughter Lily smiling on her 16th birthday, before stepping out of the cruiser. The young man behind the wheel looked about 17, with messy brown hair and a worn gray hoodie. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white with tension. "License and registration, please," Mike said, keeping his voice even and professional despite the boy's obvious nervousness. As the teen reached for his glove compartment with a shaking hand, Mike's flashlight beam caught something on the boy's wrist, a flash of color that made the officer's breath catch in his throat. There, wrapped around the boy's thin wrist, was a friendship bracelet with an unmistakable pattern of blue, green, and yellow threads woven together with a tiny silver star charm. Mike felt as if the ground had suddenly shifted beneath his feet. His hand instinctively went to his pocket, where he carried an identical bracelet, the one Lily had been wearing the day of the accident 2 years ago. "Something wrong, officer?" the teen asked, holding out his license with a trembling hand. Mike couldn't speak for a moment. His mind raced with impossible questions. The bracelet was unique. Lily had made only 2 of them, one for herself and one she'd given to Mike on Father's Day. He'd kept his in his wallet until the day of the accident, when he placed his bracelet in Lily's hand before they closed the casket. She was buried wearing both. Or so he thought. "That bracelet," Mike finally managed to say, his voice rougher than he intended. "Where did you get it?" The teen, Tyler Brooks according to his license, glanced down at his wrist and then back at Mike, confusion mixing with fear in his eyes. "This? A friend gave it to me. Why? Is something wrong with it?" Mike struggled to maintain his composure. The patrol car's radio crackled with dispatcher chatter, but it sounded distant, as if coming from another world. The coincidence seemed impossible. The pattern was too specific, the little star charm too unusual. "Which friend?" Mike asked, unable to keep the urgency from his voice. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Just someone I used to know. Look, is this about my taillight? Because I was planning to get it fixed tomorrow, I swear." But Mike barely heard him. His mind flashed back to the days after the accident, the funeral home, the casket, placing the bracelet in Lily's hand. Had someone taken it? The thought made him feel sick. Or was this just an incredible coincidence? A similar bracelet that his grief-stricken mind was convincing him was identical. "Step out of the car, please," Mike said, his police training taking over while his mind still reeled. As Tyler reluctantly got out, Mike caught sight of something else. A small notebook on the passenger seat with a familiar handwriting on the cover. His heart pounded against his ribs so hard it hurt. It was Lily's handwriting. The same looping letters she used to dot her eyes with tiny circles instead of dots. The same handwriting he saw every night in the journal he couldn't bring himself to put away. What was going on? How did this nervous teenager have not only a bracelet identical to Lily's, but also something with her handwriting? Mike's hand moved instinctively to his service weapon, not because he felt threatened, but because for the first time in his career, he felt completely out of control. "I need you to tell me the truth," Mike said quietly. "And I need you to tell me now. Where did you really get that bracelet?" Tyler stood by his car, shoulders hunched and eyes darting between Officer Mike and the ground. The evening was getting cooler, and a light breeze rustled the leaves of nearby trees. Cars occasionally passed by, their headlights briefly illuminating the scene before fading away. "It's just a bracelet," Tyler said, his voice cracking slightly. "My friend gave it to me, that's all." Officer Mike took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside him. "Look, I'm not trying to get you in trouble. This is personal." He pulled out his wallet and showed Tyler a worn photo of Lily, his finger pointing to her wrist where an identical bracelet could be seen. This bracelet. My daughter made only 2 of these. One for her and one for me. Tyler's expression changed from nervous to confused. He looked down at his wrist, then back at the photo. I don't understand. I never met your daughter. She died 2 years ago, Mike said quietly, the words still difficult to say out loud even after all this time. Car accident. She was buried wearing both bracelets. Tyler's face paled. That's impossible. I got this from. He trailed off, and Mike noticed the boy's hands were shaking more now. Something wasn't right. The taillight, the nervous behavior, Mike had initially chalked it up to a teenager afraid of getting a ticket. But this was something else. Your record shows you've had some trouble, Mike said, keeping his voice level. Skipping school, that incident at the mall last year, the party that got broken up on Westfield Road. He watched Tyler's reaction carefully. I'm not interested in any of that right now. I just want to know about the bracelet and that notebook. Tyler's eyes widened at the mention of the notebook. You had no right to look at that, he said, a flash of anger replacing his fear. It was in plain sight, Mike replied, and it has my daughter's handwriting on it. For a moment, neither spoke. The distant sound of a train whistle broke the silence, and Tyler seemed to make a decision. He sighed heavily and leaned against his car. I was in a bad place after my mom died, he began, staring at the ground. Dad was working double shifts at the factory. My grades tanked. Started hanging out with some guys who were into stuff I knew I shouldn't be doing. Mike nodded, recognizing the all-too-familiar story of kids left to drift after tragedy. The school counselor put me in some program for at-risk youth, Tyler continued, making air quotes with his fingers. Paired us up with high school mentors. That's where I met. He glanced at the photo Mike was still holding, your daughter. Mike felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Lily was your mentor. Tyler nodded. For about 3 months, she helped me with math homework. Talked to me like I wasn't just some problem kid. His voice softened. She made these bracelets for us during our last session, said it was a promise. I'd stay in school, keep trying, and she'd always be there to help. Mike struggled to process this information. Lily had never mentioned being a mentor, but then their relationship had been strained that last year. She'd been pulling away, establishing her independence. There were whole parts of her life he knew nothing about. And the notebook? Mike asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's full of math notes and study guides she made for me, Tyler said. I still use them sometimes. They help me remember the steps better than my teachers do. Mike felt tears threatening to form and blinked them back. This troubled teen had a connection to his daughter that he hadn't known about, had been keeping a piece of her alive in a way. After the accident, Tyler continued, I heard about it at school. There was an announcement, a moment of silence. But nobody knew I knew her from the program. He looked up at Mike, his eyes glistening. I didn't go to the funeral. Didn't think I belonged there with her real friends and family. But I kept the bracelet on, never took it off. Mike looked at the boy with new eyes. Not just some teenager with a record, but someone Lily had cared about enough to mentor, to make a bracelet for. Someone she'd been helping when Mike thought she was just going through a rebellious phase. The program ended after. Tyler swallowed hard. I tried to keep my promise to her, stayed in school, but it's been hard without, he gestured vaguely. I messed up a few times, but I never took the bracelet off, never. Mike felt something shift inside him. A crack in the wall of grief he'd built around himself. For 2 years, he'd been drowning in the loss of his daughter. Now, standing in front of him was living proof that pieces of her remained in the world, that her kindness had touched lives he knew nothing about. I'd like to see those notes, Mike said softly, if you don't mind. The next morning, Officer Mike sat at his kitchen table surrounded by paperwork. He hadn't slept much. After letting Tyler go with just a warning about the taillight, he'd spent most of the night digging through boxes in the attic, boxes of Lily's things he hadn't been able to face since the accident. His coffee had gone cold, forgotten as he flipped through a school yearbook from 2 years ago. There it was, a small photo of the student mentorship program. In the back row stood Lily, her smile bright and confident. And there, in the front row, looking uncomfortable in a group photo, was Tyler. Mike rubbed his tired eyes. How had he missed this? He remembered Lily mentioning volunteering at school, but he'd been so caught up in his own busy schedule at the police department that he hadn't paid much attention. Another regret to add to his growing list. His phone buzzed with a text from his partner Dave. "You coming in today?" Chief asking. Mike sent a quick reply saying he needed a personal day, then returned to his investigation. Next to the yearbook lay Lily's school planner that he'd found in one of the boxes. He'd never looked through it after the accident, it had been too painful. Now he carefully turned the pages, looking for any mention of the mentorship program or Tyler. There it was, in Lily's neat handwriting. Tutoring with TB, 4:00 p.m., repeated on several Tuesdays and Thursdays. TB, Tyler Brooks. And in the notes section for 1 week, make friendship bracelet for Tyler, remind him he can do this. Mike's throat tightened. He got up and poured his cold coffee down the sink, staring out the window at the backyard where Lily used to practice soccer. The swing she'd loved as a child still hummed from the old oak tree, moving slightly in the morning breeze. He had to know more. An hour later, Mike pulled into the parking lot of Riverside High School. The building looked exactly as it had when he'd attended parent-teacher conferences for Lily, the same brick facade, the same flag fluttering above the entrance. But now it felt like a place that held secrets about his daughter he'd never known. At the front office, he showed his badge and asked to speak with the coordinator of the mentorship program. The secretary directed him to room 203, where a woman with glasses and curly hair was arranging books on a shelf. "Ms. Hanson," Mike asked, knocking on the open door. She turned, a questioning look on her face. "Yes, can I help you?" "I'm Officer Reynolds, Lily Reynolds' father." He watched as recognition and then sadness crossed her face. "Mr. Reynolds," she said softly, "please come in, have a seat." Mike sat in one of the student desks, feeling too big for the small chair. "I'm here about the mentorship program Lily was involved in." Ms. Hanson nodded, pulling up a chair across from him. "Lily was one of our best mentors. The students loved her." "I didn't know she was doing this," Mike admitted, the words painful to say out loud. "I found out yesterday that she was mentoring a boy named Tyler Brooks." Ms. Hanson's eyes widened slightly. "Tyler, yes. They worked well together, despite his challenges." "What can you tell me about their relationship? As mentor and student?" She smiled softly. Lily had a gift for connecting with the harder cases. Tyler was struggling after losing his mother. Acting out, grades dropping. None of the teachers could reach him. She leaned forward. But Lily somehow broke through. She didn't talk down to him like some of our mentors do. She treated him like an equal who just needed some help. Mike tried to picture it, his daughter sitting across from the troubled teen he pulled over yesterday, patiently working through math problems, making that bracelet as a symbol of their connection. "Did she mentor other students?" he asked. 3 others, but Tyler was the one she spent the most time with. She even came to me asking for permission to continue working with him after the official program ended for the semester. Mike felt a strange mix of pride and regret wash over him. Pride in the person his daughter had become, regret that he'd missed so much of it. After Lily's accident, Ms. Hanson continued, her voice softer now. "Tyler took it hard. He stopped coming to school for almost 2 weeks. When he came back, he was different, quieter, more withdrawn. I tried to assign him another mentor, but he refused." She stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. "This might interest you." She handed Mike a paper, an essay with Tyler's name at the top and the title, "The Person Who Changed My Life." As Mike began to read, he felt his hands trembling slightly. The essay was about Lily, how she had believed in Tyler when no one else did, how she had made him feel like his future mattered when he'd given up on himself. The final paragraph hit him hardest. "I don't know if I'll ever be the person she thought I could be, but every day I wear this bracelet she made for me and I try, because Lily believed I was worth something and I don't want to let her down." Mike carefully folded the paper and placed it in his pocket, thanking Ms. Hanson with a voice that didn't quite sound like his own. As he walked back to his car, the world around him seemed different somehow. For 2 years, he'd been drowning in the loss of his daughter. But now he was discovering that pieces of her were still here, in the lives she'd touched, in the difference she'd made. And somehow, against all odds, Her path had crossed his again through a broken taillight and a handmade bracelet. Officer Mike found himself sitting in his patrol car outside the rundown apartment building where Tyler lived. The address had been in the school records Ms. Hanson had shared with him. He wasn't entirely sure why he was here or what he planned to say. He just knew he needed to talk to Tyler again. The building had seen better days. Paint peeled from the railings, and a few windows were patched with duct tape. This wasn't the worst neighborhood on his beat, but it was far from the best. Mike thought about Lily growing up in their comfortable suburban home with the big backyard and felt a pang of sadness thinking about the different worlds these two kids had come from. Taking a deep breath, Mike got out of his car and climbed the concrete steps to apartment 3B. He hesitated before knocking, wondering if this was crossing a line. He was off duty, in plain clothes, but still a police officer showing up at the home of a teenager he pulled over. Then again, this wasn't official police business. This was personal. He knocked. After a moment, the door opened a crack and Tyler's suspicious face appeared. When he recognized Mike, his eyes widened. "Officer Reynolds? What are you? Am I in trouble?" "No, you're not in trouble," Mike said quickly. "And I'm not here as a police officer. I'm here as Lily's dad. Can we talk?" Tyler hesitated, then opened the door wider. "My dad's at work. Won't be back till late." The apartment was small but tidy. One couch faced an old TV, and school books were spread across a coffee table. On the wall hung a framed photo of a smiling woman who must have been Tyler's mother. "Nice place," Mike said, not knowing how else to start. Tyler shrugged. "It's okay. We had a better place when Mom was alive." He cleared a stack of textbooks from the couch. "You can sit if you want." Mike sat down, noticing a math book open to a chapter on polynomials. Next to it lay a familiar notebook, the one he'd spotted in Tyler's car. "I went to your school today," Mike said. "Talked to Ms. Hanson about the mentorship program." Tyler looked down at his hands. "Yeah. What did she say?" "She showed me your essay." "The one about the person who changed your life?" Tyler's face flushed red. "She had no right to do that." "I'm glad she did," Mike said softly. I didn't know how much Lily meant to you, or how much you meant to her." The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken grief. Outside, a car horn honked, and somewhere a dog barked. Inside the apartment, two strangers connected by a girl they'd both loved tried to find the right words. "I've been using Lily's notes to study for finals," Tyler finally said, gesturing to the notebook. "She had this way of explaining things that just made sense, you know? Better than the teachers." Mike nodded. "She got that from her mother. Always could break things down to their simplest form." Tyler picked up the notebook, running his fingers over Lily's handwriting. "Sometimes I pretend she's still helping me. Like, what would Lily say about this problem?" He gave a sad laugh. "Probably sounds stupid." "It doesn't sound stupid at all," Mike said, his voice rough with emotion. Tyler looked at him directly for the first time since he arrived. "Can I ask you something? That day, when you pulled me over, you said Lily was buried with both bracelets. But how is that possible when I have this one?" He held up his wrist with the woven bracelet. Mike had been wondering the same thing. "I thought there were only two, hers and mine. I gave mine to her before they closed the casket." He swallowed hard at the memory. "But maybe she made a third one?" Tyler shook his head. "She said she only made two. She was wearing hers that last day we met. Said it was our connection, that whenever I looked at mine, I should remember she was wearing hers too, thinking of me and believing in me." A thought suddenly struck Mike. "When was the last time you saw her?" The exact date. Tyler thought for a moment. April 18th. It was a Thursday. Mike felt a chill run down his spine. That was 2 days before the accident. Tyler nodded, his eyes sad. "I know. We were supposed to meet the following Tuesday, but..." He trailed off, unable to finish. Mike stood up and paced the small living room, pieces falling into place. "The hospital gave me her personal effects, her phone, her wallet, her jacket. But she wasn't wearing a bracelet when they brought her in." He stopped, looking at Tyler. "I assumed she'd been wearing it, and they'd removed it at the hospital. That's why I put mine with her." "So where did hers go?" Tyler asked. "I don't know," Mike admitted, "but I think we should find out." Tyler hesitated, then picked up his phone from the table. He scrolled through it for a moment, then handed it to Mike. "This is the last picture she sent me." On the screen was a selfie of Lily, smiling broadly, giving a thumbs up with her right hand. On her wrist was the colorful bracelet, identical to the one Tyler wore. The message beneath read, "Aced my chemistry test. Now it's your turn to rock that math quiz tomorrow. Remember our deal." Mike stared at the photo, drinking in the sight of his daughter's smile. It had been so long since he'd let himself really look at pictures of her. The grief had been too raw. "She was always sending me encouraging messages," Tyler said. "Even when I messed up, she never got mad. Just kept saying we'd try again." Mike handed the phone back, his mind racing. The accident happened on Park Avenue, near the old movie theater. She was walking home from a friend's house when a car jumped the curb. The words came out mechanically, facts he'd repeated to himself countless times. If she was wearing the bracelet then, Tyler finished his thought, it might still be there. They looked at each other, a new connection forming between them, not just their shared loss of Lily, but a mystery that might lead them closer to her. "I have to find it," Mike said, determination replacing the grief in his voice. "Will you help me?" Tyler nodded, already reaching for his jacket. "Let's go." As they headed for the door, Mike noticed something on Tyler's desk that hadn't caught his attention before, a framed Student of the Month certificate from just last month. Tyler saw him looking at it and shrugged, embarrassed. "First one ever," he mumbled. "Math teacher nominated me." Mike felt his heart swell with an unexpected pride. "Lily would have been really proud of you," he said, and he realized, with some surprise, that he was proud of this boy too. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as Mike's car pulled up to Park Avenue. The spot where the accident happened looked so ordinary, just a stretch of sidewalk near an old movie theater with its faded marquee and peeling posters. Hard to believe this unremarkable place was where his world had shattered 2 years ago. "It was right here," Mike said quietly, pointing to a section of sidewalk. The driver lost control coming around that corner, jumped the curb. Tyler stood silently beside him, looking at the spot with a strange mix of dread and curiosity. He twisted the bracelet on his wrist nervously. "I've driven past this place hundreds of times on patrol," Mike admitted, "never had the courage to stop." An elderly man walking his small dog passed by, giving them a curious glance before continuing on. A couple of teenagers rode by on bikes, laughing about something. Life had continued here, unaware of the significance this patch of concrete held. "Where exactly did they find her?" Tyler asked hesitantly. Mike pointed to a spot near a street light. "Right there. She was thrown about 15 feet from where the car hit her." His voice was flat, protective numbness covering the pain of the memory. They began searching the area methodically. Mike checked around the base of the street light, while Tyler examined the nearby bushes that lined the edge of the sidewalk. Neither spoke much, both lost in their own thoughts. After 20 minutes of searching with no results, Tyler sat down on a nearby bench, frustration clear on his face. Maybe somebody found it, picked it up. Mike nodded, trying not to show his disappointment. "It's been 2 years. I didn't really expect." His words trailed off as his eyes caught something in the small drainage grate near the curb. He knelt down, peering into the darkness below. "What is it?" Tyler asked, joining him. "Not sure. There's something caught down there." Mike tried to reach between the metal bars, but the gap was too narrow for his hand. "Can't quite reach it." Tyler knelt beside him, his slimmer arm reaching through the grate. "I think I can get it." His face screwed up in concentration as he stretched his fingers toward whatever was caught in the drain. "Almost. Got it." With a triumphant look, Tyler pulled his arm back, something clutched in his fingers. As he opened his hand, both of them stared in disbelief. There, dirty and weathered but still recognizable, was a woven bracelet with blue, green, and yellow threads and a small silver star charm, identical to the one on Tyler's wrist. "It's hers," Tyler whispered. "It's really hers." Mike reached out with trembling fingers to touch the muddy bracelet. How had it ended up in the drain? Had it come off when Lily was hit? Had it been washed there by rain in the days after the accident? The questions didn't really matter. What mattered was that they had found it, this small piece of his daughter that had somehow survived, hidden just inches from where he had parked countless times. You should have it, Tyler said suddenly, holding out the bracelet to Mike. She was your daughter. Mike looked at the boy, thin, nervous, trying so hard to do the right thing despite the challenges life had thrown at him. A boy his daughter had believed in. A boy who had kept his promise to her even after she was gone. No, Mike said, gently closing Tyler's fingers back around the bracelet. You keep it. That's what Lily would have wanted. He touched his chest, where his own bracelet now hung on a chain under his shirt. The hospital had given it back to him after the funeral, found among Lily's personal effects. I have mine. Tyler looked down at the dirty bracelet in his hand, then at the identical one on his wrist. What does it mean? That we found it after all this time. Mike shook his head, not sure himself. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. As they walked back to the car, Mike noticed a small coffee shop across the street. You hungry? I could use something to eat. The coffee shop was warm and smelled of fresh bread and coffee. They found a quiet table by the window, the late afternoon sun streaming in. Mike ordered sandwiches and drinks, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while, both processing the emotions of the day. Can I ask you something? Tyler finally said, looking up from his soda. What was she like? At home, I mean, not just as my tutor. Mike smiled, the question opening a door he'd kept closed for too long. She was stubborn. Got that from her mother. Always stood up for what she believed in, even when it got her in trouble. He chuckled at a memory. When she was 10, she organized a protest in our front yard because I wouldn't let her adopt a third cat. Tyler laughed. That sounds like her. She loved music, played guitar, not very well, but with a lot of enthusiasm. Sang in the shower every morning, loud enough to wake the neighbors. Mike found the words coming easier now, memories he'd locked away flooding back. She wanted to be a teacher. Said it was the most important job in the world. She would have been a great one, Tyler said softly. She changed my life in just a few months. The simple truth of those words hit Mike hard. His daughter had made a difference. In her short life, she had reached out to this struggling boy and changed his course. What greater legacy could anyone hope for? Tell me about your mom, Mike said, realizing he knew almost nothing about Tyler's life before meeting him. Tyler's expression softened. She was the best. Worked 2 jobs most of my life, but always made time to help with homework. Made me feel like I could do anything. His fingers played with the straw in his drink. After she got sick, she made me promise I'd finish school, go to college. First one in our family. Are you going to? Mike asked. Tyler shrugged. I'm trying. My grades are better now. Miss Hanson says I might have a shot at a scholarship if I keep it up. He hesitated. That's what I was doing when you pulled me over. Coming back from the community college. They have this program for high school students to take classes early. Mike felt a sudden clarity, like puzzle pieces falling into place. The nervous boy he'd pulled over hadn't been afraid because he was doing something wrong. He'd been afraid because of past encounters with police, because of his record. But all along he'd been trying to keep his promise, both to his mother and to Lily. I think, Mike said slowly, that Lily brought us together for a reason. Tyler looked at him questioningly. You believe in that kind of thing? Fate or whatever? Mike had never been a spiritual man. His job had shown him too much random cruelty in the world. But sitting here, across from this boy who wore his daughter's bracelet, who carried her words and influence with him, he felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. I don't know what I believe anymore, Mike answered honestly. But I know I'm glad I pulled you over for that broken taillight. The weekend came, and for the first time in 2 years, Mike found himself cleaning out the garage. Boxes that had remained sealed since Lily's death were now open, their contents spread across the concrete floor. He wasn't hiding from the memories anymore. He was searching through them, looking for connections he'd missed. Tyler had arrived an hour earlier, awkwardly standing at the door with a nervous smile until Mike handed him a box labeled school stuff and pointed him toward the kitchen table. What exactly are we looking for? Tyler asked, carefully sorting through Lily's notebooks and folders. Anything about the mentorship program, Mike replied from the garage. Anything that might help us understand why she made 3 bracelets instead of just 2. The house felt different with someone else there, less empty, less haunted by silence. Mike found himself telling stories as they worked, memories of Lily triggered by objects they uncovered. The soccer trophy from 5th grade. The lumpy clay bowl she'd made in art class that he'd used for his keys ever since. The collection of seashells from their last beach vacation. Tyler listened, asking questions, laughing at the funny stories, offering quiet understanding during the painful ones. It struck Mike that this might be healing for both of them. Tyler getting to know the girl who had changed his life, and Mike finally allowing himself to remember his daughter as she had lived, not just how she had died. "I found something," Tyler called from the kitchen. Mike walked in to find Tyler holding a small, slightly battered journal with a purple cover. This was in her math folder. "I think it's a diary or something." Mike took it carefully, feeling like he was crossing some invisible boundary. Parents weren't supposed to read their teenagers' diaries, but Lily was gone, and this journal might hold answers. "Should we look at it?" he asked, leaving the decision to Tyler. Tyler hesitated. Maybe just the parts about the mentorship program. She might have written about why she made the bracelets. Mike nodded and opened the journal, flipping through pages of Lily's handwriting. Most entries were about typical teenage things: friend drama, school stress, complaints about homework. He skimmed until he found mentions of the mentorship program. "Here," he said, pointing to an entry from about 6 months before the accident. "She writes about meeting you for the first time." Tyler leaned forward, his eyes hungry for the words. "Got assigned my students for the mentor program today," Mike read aloud. 3 seem pretty easy, but the 4th, Tyler, is going to be a challenge. Ms. Hansen says he's smart but troubled. Lost his mom last year and has been getting into fights at school. Don't think he wants my help, but I'm going to try anyway. Everyone deserves someone who believes in them. Tyler swallowed hard. She knew I didn't want to be there. I was such a jerk those first few sessions. Mike continued reading, skipping ahead a few entries. Tyler finally opened up today. We were working on algebra, and I used a basketball scoring example that actually got through to him. He even smiled, a real smile, not that fake one he usually gives. Progress. The entries continued, documenting Tyler's gradual improvement, both academically and personally. Lily's pride in his accomplishments shone through her words. Then Mike found the entry about the bracelets. Decided to make friendship bracelets for Tyler and me. Found this video tutorial online, harder than it looks. Made one for Dad too, since he's been working so hard lately. 3 bracelets with the same pattern, one for each of us. Going to tell Tyler it's our secret sign, that someone's always rooting for him, even when I'm not around. Mike looked up, meeting Tyler's shocked expression. 3 bracelets. She made one for each of us. She made one for you too? Tyler asked, confused. Mike nodded slowly, the pieces finally fitting together. I found it in my locker at the police station a few days before the accident. There wasn't a note or anything. I didn't know who it was from. I kept it in my wallet, figured Lily would tell me eventually if it was from her. He pulled out his wallet and removed the one bracelet he now carried with him. After the accident, I put it with her because I thought maybe it was a sign. Tyler reached for the journal, turning to the next page. There's more, he said softly. Mike looked down at the entry, dated just days before the accident. Tyler's making real progress. He might actually pass algebra this year. Thinking about telling Dad about the mentorship program soon. I know he'd be proud, but part of me likes having this separate thing that's just mine. Plus, I'm not sure how he'd feel about me spending time with a troubled kid, his words, not mine. But I think they'd actually like each other if they met. Maybe I'll introduce them after Tyler takes his final exam. That would be a good time. The words hit Mike like a physical blow. Lily had been planning to introduce them. She'd wanted them to meet. And instead, they'd found each other by chance 2 years later, connected by a bracelet and a broken taillight. She wanted us to know each other, Tyler said, his voice thick with emotion. All this time, Mike closed the journal gently. She got her wish, just not the way any of us would have wanted. They sat in silence for a moment, absorbing this new information. Outside, the afternoon was fading into evening, golden light streaming through the kitchen windows. The same sun that had shone down on Lily as she made those 3 matching bracelets, never knowing how important they would become. I have a math test on Tuesday, Tyler said suddenly. Been studying with Lily's old notes. It's the final exam for the semester. Mike nodded, understanding what wasn't being said. Would you like some help? I'm not bad at math myself. Tyler's face brightened. Really? That would be great. As they cleared the table to make room for Tyler's textbooks, Mike felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. For 2 years, he'd been stuck in his grief, unable to move forward. Now, through this unexpected connection with Tyler, he was finding a new way to keep Lily's memory alive, not through pain and absence, but through continuing what she had started. The bracelet on his wrist caught the fading sunlight, its colors still bright despite all it had been through. 3 bracelets, 3 lives, connected by a girl who had seen the best in both of them. 6 months later, Mike stood at the back of the school auditorium, watching as Tyler walked across the stage to receive his high school diploma. The principal shook his hand, and a small but enthusiastic group in the audience cheered. Mike found himself clapping harder than anyone, a sense of pride washing over him that he hadn't expected to feel again after Lily died. Tyler had not only passed his classes but had excelled in the final semester, pulling his grades up enough to qualify for a partial scholarship to the community college. He'd be the first in his family to attend higher education, keeping his promise to both his mother and to Lily. After the ceremony, Mike made his way through the crowd of proud families to find Tyler. The boy, young man now, really was standing awkwardly by the refreshment table, his graduation cap slightly crooked on his head, his diploma clutched tightly in one hand. "You did it," Mike said, giving Tyler's shoulder a squeeze. "Congratulations." Tyler's face broke into a grin. "Couldn't have done it without your help." "Yes, you could have," Mike corrected him, "but I'm glad I got to be part of it." In the months since their discovery of Lily's journal, Mike and Tyler had fallen into a comfortable routine. 3 evenings a week, Tyler would come over for dinner and study sessions. Mike helped with math and science. Tyler tackled the rest on his own, often working at the kitchen table until late while Mike watched TV or caught up on paperwork. Tyler's father had been surprised at first by this unexpected connection between his son and a police officer. But seeing the positive changes in Tyler, the improved grades, the new sense of purpose, he'd welcomed Mike's influence. Sometimes he even joined them for dinner when his work schedule allowed. "I have something for you," Mike said now, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box wrapped in blue paper, sort of a graduation gift. Tyler took it, looking surprised. "You didn't have to get me anything." "Open it," Mike urged. Tyler unwrapped the box and opened it. Inside lay a silver watch, not an expensive one, but solid and practical. On the back, an inscription read, "Time to write your own story. Proud of you, Mike." "This is too much," Tyler said, his voice thick with emotion. "Turn it over," Mike instructed. Tyler flipped the watch over and his breath caught. Carefully attached to the watch band was a small silver star charm, the same design that had adorned the 3 friendship bracelets. "I had it removed from my bracelet," Mike explained. "Thought it would be a good reminder to take with you to college." Tyler ran his finger over the tiny star, then looked up at Mike with eyes that threatened tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Mike replied. "Just wear it. Remember where you came from and where you're going." As Tyler put the watch on his wrist, right next to the now faded friendship bracelet he still wore every day, Mike thought about the strange path that had brought them here. A traffic stop that could have ended with just a warning about a broken taillight had instead led to a connection that had changed both their lives. Later that evening, they sat on the front porch of Mike's house. Tyler's father had gone home after the small celebration dinner, but Tyler had stayed behind, seemingly reluctant to end the day. "I've been thinking," Mike said, looking out at the quiet street. "The guest room has been empty since my sister moved out last year. If you wanted a quieter place to study when you start classes in the fall." He let the offer hang in the air, not wanting to push. Tyler looked at him, surprise evident on his face. "Are you asking me to move in?" Mike shrugged, trying to keep it casual. "Just offering an option. The apartment's small, your dad works nights, and you'll need space to focus. It's just an idea." They both knew it was more than that. In the 6 months they'd known each other, Tyler had become a fixture in Mike's life, not replacing Lily, never that, but filling some of the emptiness she'd left behind. And Mike had become the mentor and support that Tyler needed to reach his potential. "I'd like that," Tyler said simply. They sat in comfortable silence as twilight deepened around them. On the coffee table between them sat a framed photograph, one they'd found in Lily's journal. It showed her smiling broadly, her arm around a younger, more sullen-looking Tyler. Both wore their matching bracelets. Mike had made a copy for Tyler and kept the original for himself. "Do you think she knows?" Tyler asked suddenly. "About us finding each other, I mean. About everything that's happened." Mike wasn't a religious man. The job had made him too practical, too aware of the random cruelty of life to put much faith in grand plans or divine intervention. And yet, the 3 bracelets, the broken taillight, the unlikely connection between a grieving police officer and a struggling teen, sometimes it felt like more than just coincidence. "I like to think she does," Mike said softly. "I like to think she's happy about it." Tyler nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. He looked down at his wrist, where the watch and bracelet sat side by side, past and future, memory and promise. "I have an early shift tomorrow," Mike said, standing up. "Should probably turn in." "Yeah, I should get going too," Tyler agreed, though he made no move to leave just yet. "Henny," Mike said, pausing at the door, "I'm really proud of you. You know that, right?" Tyler smiled, not the guarded, uncertain smile of the boy Mike had pulled over 6 months ago, but an open, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I know. Thanks for everything." As Mike watched Tyler walk down the driveway to his car, he touched the bracelet he still wore around his wrist. 3 bracelets, 3 lives, connected by threads both visible and invisible. And somehow, through the pain and loss, something new had been woven. A bond that neither he nor Tyler had expected, but one that had saved them both in different ways. The traffic stop that had started it all had been pure chance. But what came after, that had been a choice. Their choice to honor Lily's memory by building something positive from their shared loss. To complete the circle she had started drawing before her life was cut short. And in that choice, Mike had found something he thought he'd lost forever: hope for the future.